right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast. I am your host, Spencer Sutton, and today I'm flying solo. Gray Hall is moments away from having his first baby, and so he's in Denver, hunkered down. I think they actually got some snow here recently, but he's getting ready to have a baby, so we're excited for him. But I've got a great guest with me today. I have got Johnny Wolff of HomeRoom with us. And Johnny, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, hey, really great to be here. Thanks for having me, Spencer.
Yeah, this is going to be exciting. This is really a unique concept. I'm really going to let you kind of talk about your company. But first, what I'd love to do is we like for everybody to kind of tell their story of why real estate, like why are you in this real estate space and how did you get here?
Yeah, great. And so I started my real estate journey in 2008. I graduated college 2007, and 2008 you could get those really exciting 10% down investment loans that have gone away. So I invested in Midland, Texas, home of Friday Night Lights, and watched the property for a little bit, and then bought my second property a couple years later. And as a financial analyst in the Silicon Valley while I was doing that. And 2015 came around, decided I wanted to get way more invested in real estate, really believed. I analyzed markets in the United States. I really liked Austin. And I was like, I think the market it's already going really strong, but I think it has a decent amount of room left to continue growing. And so I moved to Austin, invested in a number of properties, and decided to rent them out each by the room because that would give me the most rent. Because at the time, even then, it was difficult to cash flow in Austin. But I thought appreciation was king, right? If I can leverage really heavily and I have limited capital, but I'm in a market that I believe in, like that's your biggest, it's risky. If it goes down, you're kind of in trouble. But historically, if you can hang in there and be cash flow neutral, your net worth can grow a lot. So I did that. And it went really well. And, a few years later, I was showing some friends, my real estate, my returns on those Austin properties, and they were really impressed, and they were kind of jealous, and they didn't know how to invest in properties in higher quality markets that allowed for cash flow. And so it got me thinking, decided if I do this somewhere else that has better cash flow, and I kind of began to perfect the management of this unique way of managing properties. Potentially I can scale this out. And so I moved to Kansas City in 2018 and started HomeRoom. And today we've had a few thousand roommates. So we have a few hundred owners, and we are in 10 different metro areas. So it's gone good. It's been sometimes super crazy, mostly really fun. Yeah, so that's really kind of where my real estate journey so far.
So why Midland, Texas? Like when you were an analyst in you said San Francisco, right?
Yeah, in San Francisco.
So what was it about Midland? Just the affordability of the properties, and then you knew you could cash flow.
Yeah, in Midland, and I had a connection to a property manager out there. So that was a big part of it, frankly.
Yeah.
It was the kind of the trusted connection, which a lot of investors, that's how they make decisions, which can be good, can be bad. I think but it definitely feels a bit safer. Once I made the leap, I began to understand that the microeconomic factors that affect different cities. And Midland is one where when oil goes really high, you see cash, the cash on cash gets pretty crazy. And then if oil crashes, like the rents go down throughout the market. It's very interesting. I haven't seen another market like it, but it can during like the oil bull runs, the oil country can do really well. So
yeah, awesome. Yeah, and you got in at a great time. I mean, 2008, I was licking my wounds and had just taken a severe beating in real estate here in Birmingham, and was like all of our lines of credit had gone away. We didn't have any investors to sell properties to. We had 30 rental houses and decided to start a property management company. But kudos to that, because that's great timing to get in the market at that time.
Yeah, it's better to be lucky than good, they say, right? So,
It's true, 100%.
yeah.
So then you decided that, hey, Austin, Texas, I really like that market. I mean, who doesn't love Austin? It's a fabulous market. It's very much like like a Denver, like a Nashville. And it is harder in those places to get a good cash on cash return because the properties are so expensive. So did you, I don't think you said this in your story, but did you try like traditional renting properties or did you go straight into, hey, I'm going to do roommate stuff? Kind of like house hacking.
Yeah, house hacking. The first property I bought, I realized I really liked the property. One of my strategies then, and I still use it today sometimes, is during the holiday season, some of the time, if it's not now, when all historical inventory, this doesn't apply quite as much. But in 2016, 2015, when I was buying, Thanksgiving to New Year's was ghost town in real estate still. Mm-hmm. And so I would go and just like find the highest quality property I could and negotiate really hard on the price. And so the first property I found that really worked, and it was in this, I created a heat map, using data analytics on where I thought would be the best appreciation potential over the next 3 to 5 years. And so the property I liked the best, it was just a little too expensive. If I rented it out as a house, I wasn't going to cash flow, but if I rented out by the room, it seemed like I would. And so that's the direction I went. And I lived in San Francisco, so everyone lived with roommates. I had lived in a roommate house for 6 years. And so I saw how if you manage in a certain way, it can have a really nice like mini apartment type experience where people come in and you never have full vacancy. So you have more consistent cash flows. And if you have the right processes, the stress level is not that much worse. It's just easier. And I'd also learned in one of my Midland properties, when someone had broken their lease and damaged the property where I had to come out of pocket $7,000-8,000, that in a roommate house that doesn't happen because you always have someone there paying some amount of money. In addition to that, it's really difficult for roommates to damage the property when like the roommates are sitting in the living room. You can't just like paint on the walls. Like it happened. Right. Like I had a family and they had pets and the kids had just drawn all over the walls and destroyed the carpet. Really can't happen in a roommate house because there's eyes and ears everywhere and no one wants the carpet destroyed. So there's natural accountability. So all those factors and kind of all those experiences together. And I just thought this is a better model. I'll get more rent, but it's also less risky from the sense that you're not going to have that big $0 a month. You're not going to have invisible damage with a lease break and lose $5 to $10,000 in a roommate house. It just doesn't happen. If the AC goes out, that's one thing, but that happens in all houses. But right. You're not going to have those painful months. And if you have a small portfolio, those painful months are brutal. So that was why I chose to do it. It's just less risky.
Yeah. So talk about the pool of residents or roommates that, because when obviously we manage 15,000 properties around the country, vast majority of them are single family and a vast majority of them are, hey, one house, one resident or one group of residents. We haven't perfected or we don't know how to probably manage a lot of roommate stuff. So it definitely takes a specific skill set, but talk about the pool of potential residents when you're putting up a house and you're like just trying to rent out the room. Like, I don't think it happens a whole bunch, obviously where I am in Birmingham, but I'm imagining in places like Denver, other places we're in, Nashville, obviously Austin. So talk about have you had trouble finding residents at all?
We started in Kansas City, right? So our first home was in Kansas City, which I'd say is a pretty comparable market to Birmingham. So there's likely tens of thousands of people in the Birmingham neighborhood, in Birmingham that would probably prefer a roommate, but the model may not be there yet.
Yeah.
So gotcha. The pool of candidates, it's people that are looking for more affordability and are okay with community. Some prefer community a lot more. They want that social aspect. Mm-hmm. And some do it just for affordability, but to live with homeroom is going to cost you 40% less than a studio apartment. And it's going to come with some amenities that a studio apartment wouldn't have, like maid service. And so that's pretty cool. In addition to that, you're going to have your common areas will be furnished, which includes the living room and the TV. So you can move in with just a bed and live, and the kitchen's also has kitchen essentials. So it's really nice to be able to live in a partially furnished space, not have to buy spend $5,000 on your living room and dining room and kitchen, and then live with homeroom. So it's just a much less heavy move, and it's a much more affordable way to live, kind of an ongoing way, which a lot of people would prefer, but it's not available all the time.
Yeah, right. No, that's great. Those are great points. I mean, I have a team member. She's on the marketing team. She lives in Steamboat Springs, and she has roommates in her place. And so it's very, very much the same thing. She's doing it because she wants to provide affordable housing to the workers, which is live in a ski town, so it's very expensive. So she's providing affordable housing. Now that makes a lot of sense. So talk about some of the challenges of having roommates. I mean, I know that obviously the benefits, I love the benefits of there's typically always going to be somebody paying rent, so you don't have this big vacancy for 2 or 3 months while you're turning a property.
Right.
They might do less damage because there's people in the common areas and things like that. But what about just handling, are they signing 12-month leases? Like, talk about the lease thing. And then what happens when there actually is damage, maybe even in the common area? How do you account for that when you have different people on different leases or lease terms, I guess, in the property?
Yeah, there's definitely issues, right? There's issues with single family. When you talk, I think there's different, I think each of us has comfort with things that we're super familiar with. And when you talk about owning a property and renting it out, to some people, that sounds like the most insane idea ever. Just even a single family home, even in an A-class neighborhood, it's like, that just sounds insane because the maintenance, there's a lot of maintenance things can go wrong. There's thousands. And if you're not comfortable figuring that out, and you don't understand how to find a property manager, you don't know how to screen a tenant, it just sounds crazy, right? And so the same thing with roommate housing. So even people that are experienced property manager, the idea of roommate housing sounds crazy, right? Because of the familiarity challenges. But the truth is, for our investors, it's really a no stress environment because we manage everything for our investors. Right. We do kind of the full turnkey experience for them. They come in, we help them identify a property, we do the math and the underwrite of the property. We then vet all the tenants. We have a multi-tier system for our tenant qualifications, and we have a really high collections percent. And then your question was around roommate issues. We have a series of policies and protocols for everything that can go wrong. We've seen it all. Just like every property manager has like some of the craziest stories. Now roommate houses have like 20% more crazy stories because there's people in the same house. Right. But it's just more of the same. It's just more of the same. You just get a process, you put in the lease, you enforce it. We have different member agreements. If there's damage to a property and it's a shared common area, we bill all the tenants equally, unless it's clearly identified as one person. Gotcha. And so it's really on the onus is on the tenants to provide that proof. And so that's in the member agreement that they'll be billed equally. Right. And so as we try to, doesn't always work, but we try to have the house gel and become a unit and understand that they're a community together. And so they're responsible for the common areas. We do maid service once a month, and they grade the house for cleanliness. Mm-hmm. And if we get a bad grade, then we send the maids back in 2 weeks, and then they get graded again. And they have to pay for that, all those visits, extra visits, if you're not keeping care of your house. The maids will also identify any issues with, if there's like paint, if something's damaging the property, then they'll let us know. In addition to that, we have yard care. We have exterior doorbell cameras that kind of check to make sure nothing's going wrong at the curb or causing issues where the neighbors would be unhappy. During move-outs and inspections, we were kind of doing a full 100-point checkup of the house. One of the benefits of having a number of roommates, move-outs happen more often. So that means we're there more often doing the inspection. So we're trying to inspect once every quarter at least. the common areas, exterior, all the mechanicals, all that stuff.
Do they ever like complain because you're there too much, or they're just kind of used to it because people are kind of coming and going all the time?
It's what we, that's part of living at HomeRoom, right? You sign the member agreement, which is a lease, but we call it, we want to everyone feel a part of it, and it says, main service is part of what happens here. You have to let people come in and repair your stuff. If you're there or not, we're going to do it. And that's part of living with us, is you have to let us in. You have new roommates coming. They may want tours. They'll be in and out. So there is a lot more in and out at a HomeRoom.
Mm-hmm.
I lived at our first one for 3.5 years. The coming and going of people, you always have roommates coming and going. It's just a social environment. It's not, if you want privacy, this is not the way to live. It's not really up for discussion, because we make it very clear how it's going to be at the beginning, and then that's how it is, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not a fit for you anymore, then we understand, and then we'll say goodbye.
Awesome. So Johnny, walk me through, if I'm an investor and I'm interested in, investing in one of your properties. Talk me through that process. Like, tell me what type of houses that you're identifying, how you're identifying them, and just walk me through as if I'm an investor looking to purchase one of your properties.
Sure. And, the investment, a lot of the investor process is built, you buy your first property remotely from like a turnkey company, which is what I did. And you sound like you did all yours local, so maybe it was a different experience, but it was all my sense in that process was like, they're doing a good job, but everything is really to keep costs down and not really helping me think proactively about my investment, or there's nothing that's like trying to improve returns. It's really just like, what's the minimum cost we can do things the cheapest, which is, you have to keep costs down in investment properties 100%. But the strategic advisory aspect and like, I think analytics was the part that I was like, I wish I had more of this, because the market knowledge they had was great. The understanding of transaction, the understanding of like just basic property operations was all very strong. Right. But I kind of felt like I was like navigating, the ship by myself. And so at HomeRoom, we've tried to become more of an asset manager with our investors. So what that means is you come in, you tell us your goals, and we have 10 markets. So we kind of like Evernest, you guys have a number of markets, which allows you to help investors choose a market that's right for them. With some turnkey providers that have one market, all they're doing is selling you on this city. And if the city turns, then they're like very biased, and they're not, they can't really tell you like, oh yeah, the one city I have is no longer a great city to invest in. With HomeRoom, we're diversified to give more balanced approach. And that means also, if you're looking as an investor, you're saying, hey, I want to build my wealth really fast. Then we'll say, hey, Austin and, these more Tampa, they're a bit more volatile, but they have the potential to appreciate much faster due to population growth. And if you're a cash flow investor, we'll point you at Atlanta or Kansas City, San Antonio. And so we'll help you pick the type of home you want, or the type of market you want, because that's got to be the first pick, because each market has a different attribute set. And it has to align with what your goals are: long-term wealth building, immediate cash flow. Those are the two things we're looking at. Then we'll pick a market, and then we'll kind of begin to look at what type of home is the right fit for you in that market. Each market has different types of homes, so we're kind of micro adjusting in that way. Then we'll get you a lender, get you pre-approved, and then help you make an offer. And during the offer stage, we have full construction capabilities at the company, construction manager that's done thousands of rehabs. We'll get on there and look at the inspection report with you and give you feedback. So all this is to remove stress. And if it's your first property ever or your 10th, we're going to make it feel very, tailored to you, but also like we're eliminating all these areas of risk where people don't have specific expertise typically. If their job is like a software engineer, they're not going to understand how to look at that inspection report. Even the agent will likely not be that excellent at it, whereas a construction manager should be great.
So let me ask you just real quick, like in a place like Kansas City that has older house stock, just like Birmingham, Are you even in those markets where, let's just say I'm that investor and I'm like, hey, Johnny, I really am interested in more cash flow. So I'm thinking more Kansas City. Are you going, okay, great, here's some C-class neighborhoods that we're investing in, or are you going to steer an investor towards A, B class? Like what's the typical, or do you really give them a choice? Or are you just kind of saying, hey, here are 5 properties that kind of meet your profile that we know that we can get a good cash flow on?
Yeah. Well, we're typically we're basically saying, is this property a yes or a no? Right. So we'll look at properties kind of in all, we're C-class. Kansas City gets real dicey real fast. I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's like if you go past Troost, like it's the highest murder rate in the country, and you're like, so just
So don't buy there.
Don't buy. You can. I mean, there's properties for $20,000 there for a reason, right? So
right.
You definitely have to have local market knowledge. And we do have an agent in each market that's very locally knowledgeable, right? Mm-hmm. And then we're going to look at our data. We have a data scientist on staff that's going to look at demand profiles in different parts of the market. And so we're going to kind of present the deal and say, this one will work. Here's the risk of this option. If you want higher yield, you're swinging a little bit harder. You may go cheaper on the property, and then you may have a little bit less population density. And so then you may have a little bit more risk, or you go right down the middle in Overland Park, which is across the state line. And now it's like the home's more expensive. Your yield drops a lot, but the demand is we know the demand's there. There's no doubt. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of the conversation we'll have with an investor. Like we try to be fully transparent with that sort of methodology. And when you're an out-of-state investor, especially if you're new, you're like, I've heard that I can get 14% cash on cash from a podcast with, from Bigger Pockets, like from 2014. It's like, well, okay, we can't really time travel, unfortunately, and property has appreciated to its max price point ever, and it's kind of come down just a little bit lately, but right. We're not going to be able to hit 14% unless you want to take a big swing. And you're going to go really at the edge of where we'd recommend. But I wouldn't do it. Do you want to do it? You can. We'll do our best here. So that's how kind of we're doing it. We're going to try to guide investors. We also try to understand investors' like personal asset allocation and their financial well-being. If they're going to take a big swing and they have a lot of cash and they're doing really well and they're okay with taking the risk, we're going to kind of encourage it more. And so that's sort of the asset management. We're trying to think about them and be more customized to what they're looking for.
And so move on through the process. So you've identified a property. Are these properties, once they move through closing and they own the property, are they then furnishing the property? Because you mentioned like, hey, the common area is furnished, so the owner is then furnishing that, right?
Yeah. So we actually we're fully vertically integrated. We do everything.
Okay.
So that's why it's a turnkey. It's like not a turnkey in the sense that we're not buying off market homes, rehabbing them, and then just selling them with a tenant in it. It's turnkey in the sense that you come to us, you have to write one check at closing, you write us a check once the construction is started, and then that's it, right? And we do the construction if needed, and we furnish the space. We throw a Matterport on there, and we do everything, right? So there's not. The owner's kind of chilling. They have a number that they expect at the end of each month once the property is fully stabilized. Mm-hmm. And they have to kind of like ask, be a part of the conversation, the decision-making process. But other than that, it's a very passive process for investors. And the cash yield can be 100% higher than a standard single family rental, which is, rent can be 100%, like double. It does vary quite a bit more in single family rentals, though it can be the same, right? But it usually is on average 30 to 40 to 50% higher than a single family rental for the rent, with a little bit more variability. But it's pretty simple, and you don't have those big $0 months or those big hits. It's more evergreen sort of returns like an apartment building.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. It's almost, and most of everything you're buying is single family, correct?
Exclusively at this
point. Yeah. So that's really interesting because you're right. I mean, the challenge with putting one resident in. I mean, ideally you want to keep that person. I'm just thinking of landlords out there. I've seen a lot of landlords who buy properties, they stick a resident in there, they don't check on the property. They, maybe the tenant stays in there for 3 or 4 years, but they're not checking on the property. When that resident moves out, they've got some serious work to do. I would rather have regular checkups. I mean, I know that we do annual checkups, and of course, anytime one of our maintenance techs goes out to a house, they're looking at it. But yeah, that sounds really, really interesting. So, how many investors do you have currently?
We've had a couple hundred at this point.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yep.
And you're in 10 different markets. You've got about 1,000 units. Did you say?
Yeah, and that's room. So we're at about a couple hundred properties. So
right.
A couple hundred, a few more investors than properties. We have a few investors who own 5, 10. We have a fund that owns 15. So it's different amount of investors than houses. But yeah, that's our footprint today.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, especially you guys started in 2018. And so talk about the future. Like, where do you see yourself, Johnny? Where do you see HomeRoom in 5-10 years?
The goal of, any startup is, and I really respect what you guys have done, right? Like, I think the bootstraps approach that you have taken as a company I admire it. It's tough. It's a tough, slow slog of building.
It's a grind.
Especially at the beginning. It's just like there's no money, there's no free lunches, there's no bean bags. So it's
correct.
But there's a lot of benefits to what you guys have done. And but we've raised some VC funding, and our goal has always been to be in every city in the United States. We think that there's a need for this type of housing. There's, everywhere. And we've seen, Olathe, Kansas has like decent demand for roommates, right? Which on the face of it doesn't seem like, if in conversations, that's one of the big first things that people say, like, oh yeah, that's like, and you mentioned it a little earlier, and it's how I thought about it when I lived in San Francisco. It wasn't until I moved to Kansas where I thought maybe there's demand for this type of housing kind of more generally than just in these expensive markets. So the goal is to be in 1,000 markets in the next 5 to 7 years. We're in 10, so we
good. We love big goals.
We got a ways to go. We'd love to see in 10 years to be international, and so it's a big reach to get from where we are today to international. But Canada looks really nice. We like parts of Europe, and then eventually, there's other parts of the world that need this as well, and so. We kind of discuss all of them. It's not something that's in our immediate plans, right? Our immediate plans are, increasing density in the markets we're in. So, yeah.
No, I love that. I mean, I love, something that got me excited was in 2013, Matthew Whitaker, who founded Evernest, said, hey, we're going to get to 25,000 properties. That's the goal. Back in 2013, we were managing 250, 300 at the time. And so here we are, just over 15,000, and we've already set our target, another 10-year target for the end of 2029 to be at 250,000. So big goals are good, man. They keep people focused and keep people working hard. Well, that's fantastic. I mean, Johnny, how could, if investors wanted to learn more about your group, learn more about how to invest in these types of properties, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can see, our properties at livehomeroom.com, take virtual tours. There's some pro formas that show examples of properties you can invest that have been invested in with us. You can also reach me at johnny@livehomeroom.com. Happy to answer any questions and forward it on to my team if they can help you. And if you're a house hacker, that's how I got started, really. So happy to help with any house hacking kind of questions.
Yeah, we've actually in the past couple of months interviewed a few house hackers that got started in New York City and Chicago and have built a pretty good business out of that. So fantastic. Well, Johnny, this has been great. I've loved learning about new things like this. This is wonderful. what you all are doing, and best of luck to you. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, Spencer, thanks so much for having me, and good luck with Evernest.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast.